It is now my pleasure to introduce Len Asper, founder of the Asper Center for Global Entrepreneurship. A graduate of Brandeis University, Len is the president and CEO of Anthem Sports and Entertainment Corporation. He has also just stepped up as co-chair of the International Business School's Board of Advisors and previously served several terms on Brandeis University's Board of Trustees. I am thrilled to be working with him. Len is a passionate and generous supporter of both his alma mater and the International Business School. He is completely committed to making Brandeis International Business School a great business school. Greater business school. No,
Greatest.
Greatest business school. A greatest business school.
Greatest.
I will now invite Len to share more about his vision for the Asper Center before presenting the Asper and the International Business School, before presenting the Asper Award to Robert Herjavec. Len, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ruby. Robert should be, he is live.
Yes.
You may just, oh yeah, there he is, yeah.
Hi, Robert.
Hi, guys. Hi, Len.
Oh, I got you in here. Okay. We have real producers here. Okay, thank you. Well, I actually was gonna have my note phone, like trying to be cool and have my notes on my phone, but the thing with the dark degree, like I used to, you need to put the code in every 2 minutes. So I don't know, maybe some of you guys know how to stop that. And people here know how to make that work. I will say my son Matthew is here. He's a junior in undergrad. Sorry, Matt. He was the reason I was texting. Because I told him to park in Spingold, he ended up at Spingold and looking at it in the theater. I said Spingold in the theater, and I didn't really give him enough detail, so I apologize for that. Anyway, he'll know where the business school is sooner than later. I do want to first of all thank the organizer, everybody at the business school. We started this entrepreneurship program. It was one person, Chuck Reed, and it was an idea, and like a lot of successful things. People took it and people, professors got onto it, deans got onto it, the dean at the time, and he, of course, herself has led and championed this, and then so many professors have gotten involved and created such an incredible program that I'm so proud to be a part of. So thank all the staff of the school for that. Really different than 10 years or 7 years ago when we started. It just got so much better and bigger than I ever imagined. So thank you for that. I do want to say also thank you to Robert for joining us today. And he'll get your words in a second, Robert, plenty of them. But I don't know. I think you all know what a big deal this is to have Robert here. And I was telling him I was in an office of a senator in Washington, a very famous senator, and Robert was on TV, and I made some joke about Canada has taken over your office, and they said, oh, how do you know him? I said, yeah, I met him once or twice, and they said, Robert, and then they had a business idea. It's a senator from the United States, and so I was talking about conflicts of interest, and anyway, whatever. Anyway, so I just got a couple of good things. Dovetailing the comments about entrepreneurship. The reason I got into this and decided this was an interesting idea was because I've seen other entrepreneurship centers be very successful before there was one at Brandeis, but also it just goes back to this whole concept of what is business. It's a lot more than numbers, and the numbers are a very important aspect of it, but the art of business is as important as the science of business. Whether it's relationships, understanding how to manage relationships, understanding how to read contracts, the words do matter, understanding what's going on in the world, what's going on in pop culture, what people want, what people like, how to relate to others inside and outside your environment. It's all part of it, and having more and more experiences, as many as you can, is important. As important as knowing numbers and the future value of money and present values and all those things, which are important, by the way. If you don't know them, somebody around you should. You have. I remember a friend of mine went to Harvard Business School, and he said the first thing I learned about business was get a good finance person. So hopefully we're producing some who understand the art and some who understand the science, who can come together, and that symbiosis of those two concepts is really important to be successful in business. Brandeis, we talked about Brandeis being the best and the greatest. I really believe, we should be creating the greatest business school on the planet here, and that should be our goal. Like, why settle for less? There's no reason we can't be. If there's no barriers to entry, we already solved that problem, and there's no reason we can't be the best. And both in terms of the experience one gets here and the value others place on a Brandeis business degree, and that's what I'm striving to make happen. And I'm doing it partly because I'm loyal. I love it here. I love it. I loved the school. I had an incredible time here, and I just am really. I'm really loyal to it. I'm a team player. That's all. This is my team. I will always be part of this team. Secondly, my name's beside Brandeis University, so I can't help it. I'm kind of forced to be, when I say I went to Brandeis, I don't want people to go, yeah, is that some school in Boston somewhere? Or is that Yugoslavia? Yugoslavia all over the place here. But I want them to say, whoa, you went to Brandeis. Whoa, that's what I want. So, and you want that. So we're all on the same team here, and I think it's going to be we're headed towards something great. It's just been a long journey from going from a master's of international economics and finance when I was here to what we've got here. And so I'm really proud of this school, and I'm so glad to be associated with it. And so Robert, I want to thank you for accepting this award. I'm going to I mean, one thing about Robert is you all know enough about him, but the one part of this award that's important to me is that people who win it give back to society. No one has got a better track record of that than today's recipient of the award. Because being successful in business is about yes, reward, but it's also a responsibility. And I don't think anyone in this room would doubt that or oppose that comment. But it is part of it. To win this award, you have to not just be good and smart and make a lot of money. You have to give back, and Robert does that, as I say, like no other, to both in time and in money. So, Robert, there's actually a description. I have to read the formal words. Okay, so this is where the age starts to show. Okay, so it said, I can't even find my glasses. They don't carry glasses. She didn't carry glasses. These work? These 2.5s? No. Okay, good. I got 1.5. Well, Robert, Brandeis University celebrates and honors Robert Herjavec for his leadership in promoting entrepreneurship and innovation. The Asper Center for Global Entrepreneurship, April 27, 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is the last thing. I like that, the Heisman. The last thing I'd like to thank Ajay Chadha, former fantastic for the prof of the classes, PwC Consulting, longtime friend, CEO and CFO of many companies. Thank you for coming to provide the prof. Robert, thank you. It's all yours. Quickly, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, here we are. Well, I know everyone wants to hear from Robert, not from me. And I know you guys have a lot of questions, but I did want to kick it off with one question, just because I was reading through Robert's book, You Don't Have to Be a Shark. And one thing that really stood out to me, just the image of it. It's the Herjavec cold shower approach to thinking about launching your own business. And Robert has a bunch of things he goes through with the cold shower approach. And I just wanted to ask one other thing, which is in Shark Tank, the goal, the end is to get the money, to sign the deal. But as we know, that's actually the beginning, really, of the journey. Like you surmount this hurdle, and then it's hurdles and hurdles and hurdles and hurdles. So I just wondered if you could kick it off maybe and talk a little bit about your experience with the entrepreneurs and how you kind of manage that process of communicating, inspiring, and conveying to them that, you know what, great, now let's roll up our sleeves.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure everybody can.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the award. It means a lot to me. It's always nice when you get recognized for good work and especially giving back. And especially when you get recognized by someone I respect, admire as much as Len. So thank you for the kind words, Len. And I love how you embarrassed your son in front of the entire class. That was classic. You know, Shark Tank is really, we've become such a cultural phenomena. For those of you that don't know, Kevin, the mean bald guy, and I are Canadian. And we actually started the show in Canada almost 20 years ago. So think about that. We've been doing that format for 20 years now. And you can count on one hand how many TV shows have lasted for that long. So I just wanted to give you that context. Like, it's incredible. And I'll never forget, in the first season, we were at a launch party with ABC watching the first premiere. And by the way, I've only ever seen one full episode. I find it very difficult to watch myself on TV. And right now I'm seeing myself in a split screen with you guys, and it's freaking me out because in my mind, I feel I look like Brad Pitt. But when I see myself on TV, I say, who is that guy? He kind of looks like Robin Williams. So that there's this whole disconnect for me around that. But I was at this viewing party and the head of data analytics from ABC was standing next to me. And the show comes on and I said to him, what do you think? And he was very unemotional. He's a data guy. His job is to decide from an analytics perspective if the shows will get picked up. So this was our first episode. We shot the entire season. And I said to him, what rating do we need to get in order to get a second season? And he looked at me and he said, you need a 1.8. I said, oh, if we don't get a 1.8 tonight, there won't be a season 2. He looked at me and he said, if you don't get a 1.8, there won't be a second episode. That's how brutal American TV is. It is one of the most competitive businesses out there. It's extremely fickle because everybody wants to copy a good idea, and most people are afraid to do something new. Shark Tank was new, and one of the things we never saw happening was that families would love our show. We are the #1 show on television for family viewing. It's one of the few shows that a mom, a dad, a kids can watch. And when I say kids, I mean like 8-year-old kids. Like, I'll be walking down the street and I have like 8-year-old kids come up to me and say, oh my God, Mr. Herjavec, I love the show. I've been watching since I was little. And I'm like, how long have I been doing this? Anyway, what I love about your question is, you know, most people have never started a business. Think of business or entrepreneurship as a state in time, meaning you start the business, it begins and it ends. Or you become wealthy, it begins and it ends. Or some magical thing happens and you cross through a magical door and it's, you know, unicorns and puppy dogs and sprinkles for the rest of your life. And what you learn is it's really constant forward momentum. The great businesses that I've met and seen are the ones that are constantly adapting. If you could put the changes in life, in your personal life, in business, in macro conditions, if you could quantify all of that as an economist on a spreadsheet, everybody would be a successful entrepreneur. What makes it hard is the uncertainty. Stuff changes all the time. It's the dynamic nature of running a business. And, you know, we on Shark Tank have become really good friends, all of us. Well, 5 of us except one. I won't tell you which one. But we actually talk about this stuff because we love business. We love, and people think we love money. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with money. And I love cars and I love airplanes and I love to play at life. But what I really love is creating something. There is such an incredible satisfaction to have an intangible idea that doesn't exist and starting a business and building a team and walking in and seeing your name, whether it's your name or a name that you created, and creating life. I just, nothing beats that. And once you do it and you're successful in your terms, forget anybody else's terms. Nobody can ever take that away from you. And that's the one thing we always say. You know, we say, if you lost it all tomorrow, could you do it again? And maybe it's a little bit of arrogance, but all of us are like, yeah, absolutely, I would do it again. But partly because we love doing it, like we love the game. And you know, Mark Cuban always says this: great winners are great competitors, and they love to play the game.
Great, thank you. Great answer. Who wants to ask the first question? All right, Sohan. Yeah, actually, come up here. Come up to the front.
Woohoo! Let me see it.
You better have the pitch deck on there.
Yeah.
It's just
If it's a really good idea, I'm investing Len's money.
yeah, that's a great idea.
Hi, Robert. It's nice to meet you. So my question was specifically revolving around the scope of my role that I'm doing right now. So I'm currently a digital marketer tasked with the testing and adoption of AI marketing tools for my agency. And I just wanted some advice on how to create use cases, since there aren't many specific references for adoption of AI within an agency. Could you provide me some advice on communicating potential business impact to stakeholders, testing methodologies, and process design for this?
Let's just stay with part of it.
Okay.
Let's just do one.
Could you, okay, let's
One
just,
part.
we'll still distill it. Could you provide me,
AI.
yeah, for an
Yeah.
AI adoption and testing, could you provide me advice on how to communicate potential business impact to stakeholders?
So let me put all of that into like one bucket for you. So right now I'm at an FBO in San Francisco, and the biggest computer show in our space was going on this week. It's still going on. It's called RSA. And I rarely go to computer shows to get great ideas, because it's the old Wayne Gretzky thing. You know, if everybody's skating to the puck, it's probably too late. You want to go to where the puck's going to be, kind of thing. But I love going to the shows to see what people are talking about, what the buzz is, because I think you've got to understand the pulse of the business community. So I say that because every booth, every second person was talking about AI. Like it, you know, last year, everybody was talking about cloud adoption. The year before that, people were talking about, you know, identity or the lack of a perimeter. So just for context, I own a pretty large cybersecurity firm. We're probably one of the largest in our space in the world. So we're deep in this. My worry about AI in general is everybody is talking about AI. It is probably the most overused, buzziest word out there. And I kind of have a general rule of thumb that tells me the technology is waning is when the guy who cuts my hair starts asking me about a technology. I always worry that I'm late to the game. So when I got into cybersecurity and I sold my second business in it, everybody was talking about the internet, including the guy who cut my hair. He's like, oh, I'm going to start an internet company. Do you think this internet thing is going to be hot? And I'm like, I got to get out of this. It's time to sell. My general view about AI is that it's heavily misunderstood. So in our world, we deal with massive amounts of data. So the basis of what we do is we take in logs. So think of a log like an electronic fingerprint. every time you touch a computer, every time you touch a tablet, every time you do anything electronically, that is a unique fingerprint, which we call a log. We take those logs in and correlate them to make sure no one's attacking you online. I'm oversimplifying it. But think how many billions of logs an average enterprise creates in a single day. So we've been using deep learning and mission learning and all kinds of technologies for years in order to be able to make sense of that. Now, all of a sudden, everybody has AI. Microsoft has AI. Google 2 days ago announced the new AI engine as a plugin for something. I'm not really sure where that world is going. I do think of it in more simplistic terms. To me, it's the ability to make sense of massive amounts of data and create use cases around that. So digital marketing in our world is really about creating a presence online to create inbound leads. I don't know how your company looks at it, but in our space, that's the big push for digital marketing is we want to create the top of the funnel where we get lots of leads, build activity, and then those customers come in and we convert them for something. So we use a lot of deep learning data, AI type stuff to try to understand that customer journey. Meaning, if somebody clicked on something, how long did they stay? Where did they go? And then where did they show up afterwards? Meaning, do they fill out a form? Do they show up as a lead with one of our salespeople? And then we combine all of that data with other tool sets, which I'm sure you know, things like Sixth Sense and all kinds of other tools to try to provide. So if somebody clicks in from Chubb Security, we try to understand, has anybody from Chubb Security looked for this kind of information? How many people have hit our website? And we try to track those patterns. Anyway, really long-winded answer to tell you, I think that I would focus more on the digital marketing component of it and the output and the value that I get out of it from using data as opposed to just AI. I think it's the application of large-scale data against marketing problems, and then how does my customer benefit from it?
Thank you. Okay, Omer.
Hi, Robert. I was hoping you might be able to speak to the difference as you see it between, this concept of, I think, working really hard, long hours, a lot of stress, and working effectively in a way that kind of brings about real outcomes.
Great to meet you, Omer. Thanks for your question. It's a balance. I think, so Kevin and I just had this argument where Kevin believes everybody should work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if not willing to do that, they should be fired and burn in hell or something to that effect, as I think he called it. I think it depends on what stage in life you are and what you want out of that stage in life. So I think as an entrepreneur, you need to make a decision what's more important to you at that point in your life. Meaning, is balance in your life really important to you in your 20s, in your 30s, 40s, or is quality of life, including a certain type of financial background, more important to you? So nobody can make that decision for you, by the way. For me, the decision was relatively easy because we're very poor. So I didn't go into my 20s thinking quality of life, how hard do I work? I just didn't want to be poor anymore. But I didn't think about being rich. I didn't understand what rich meant. I just didn't want to be poor. So I was willing to work literally 20 hours a day for years in order to gain a foothold so that later in life, I would have the freedom to live my life the way I want to. Now, the irony out of all that is I still work 20 hours a day, but I really, really love what I do. But the difference is in my 20s, I had no choice. It was either be poor, stay in your position in life, try to get ahead. Now I have a choice that I can live any way I want, and I choose to do it because I'm probably not very good at anything else. And I feel like we're building a great business and it's exciting. 2 years ago with this business, we were a company of 200 million and 200 people. And 2 years later, we're $1 billion company with 1,000 people. Like that to me is exciting. And so I'm really, really into it and I love to compete. But it's really true. Somewhere on your journey, it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. In fact, at my board meeting just last week, what my board said to me, and we have a lot of really smart people on my board, they said to me, you're not giving yourself enough time to think. Because I've gotten into the weeds so much that every day I come in, every moment of my day is super busy and super planned out. And now I'm starting to schedule blocks of time where I literally do nothing. And in that time, I find I'm more creative and I create things that maybe other people don't see. But in my 20s, man, I just worked like hell. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. I had no money. And so I just had to outwork everyone else in the room.
Thank you. Right. And question, let's do actually Emil had his hand up before, and then we'll do Sion Grace, and then we'll do Leo.
Hey, Robert, my name is Emil, fellow.
Hey, Emil.
I had a question because we talk a lot about success. Entrepreneurship usually has a connotation of being successful, making money, but this may seem a little bit of a basic question, but I'm just curious if you could speak on specifically, a big failure that is very notable to you and how you overcame that. And the reason I ask is because as students, we're entering a potential market where it seems turbulent, the outlook may not seem so positive. And coming out into that market, whether you want to start a business or coming to a job or look for a job, wanted to hear your thoughts on what that kind of mindset is like and what, if someone were to feel failure, go through failure, what were some things that you'd recommend that person to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think it's challenging right now in the market. But interesting side note, most of us, Mark, Cuban, Damon, Kevin, we all started great businesses in times of great upheaval. And I've often thought about this. Why is that? And somebody said to me the other day, great change rarely benefits the incumbent. So think about that. Yeah, it's hard out there. Things are changing. You've got the regional bank issue. You've got a potential recession. Someone is going to benefit. The question is, which of those sectors are going to benefit and which are going to stay the same? And I've really thought about that because just because you're big doesn't guarantee success. So I think a lot of incumbents are going to change. Here's an amazing stat for you. 50% of the Fortune 500 companies on the current list weren't there 15 years ago. So just think about how big you have to be to get on the Fortune 500 list, and 50% of them don't exist anymore. Like, talk about change and upheaval. I think the mistake that I made is I always thought, and that's why I love your question, I always thought life is about being right. How many times can I be right? How many times can I be successful? And what you learn is you are going to fail way more than you're going to succeed. Like, way more. But you only have to be right once. And Cuban has a great saying. He said, I've started a lot of businesses. A lot of them didn't work out, but I sold one for $6 billion. It's pretty good. And, I haven't quite got there yet, still working at it, but I can count on one hand the amount of great success I've had. I can't count the amount of failure. And it's not big failure, because I think great entrepreneurs don't take bets that will kill you. The problem with death is it's pretty final. Once your company dies, it's really hard to come back from the dead. It's very, very difficult. So yeah, I'm a risk taker. Len's a risk taker. Great entrepreneurs are risk takers, but you want to take smart risks. So yeah, I failed a lot. I remember times when I couldn't meet payroll. I remember a time I had to sell one of my collector Ferraris to meet payroll because I had a shitty CFO who did horrible cash planning and called me on a Wednesday and said, we don't have enough cash to make payroll Friday. And I love that Ferrari, but guess what? I love the company more. That car was gone like that. So lots of little failures like that along the way, because if you're not failing, you're not pushing that limit, right? It was Jacques Villeneuve said, how do you know you're going too fast is when you spin off the track. And so you've got to constantly pushing those limits without crashing the car, I guess is the point. But yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, just want to take one quick question from online, which is, what would you say to someone who is afraid to be an entrepreneur, right? That was the question.
What I would say is the pain of your current situation isn't great enough. And what I mean by that is, I'm very comfortable talking to large groups of people. I do speeches for 5,000 people, 20,000 people. I think I'm one of the top cybersecurity people in the world. There is no meeting I can walk into where anybody will intimidate me for anything. That's me today. At 20, I couldn't speak to another human being. I believed that, typical Eastern European, I believed that people who put themselves out there were good at talking, were showy. I believe that if you're great at something, the world is going to beat a path to your door. What I learned is there is no such thing as genius in the darkness of a basement. The world is not going to beat a path to your door. No one is going to find you. No one is going to come magically out of the sky and prick you out of obscurity and make you great if you don't put yourself out there. Now that sounds easy, but you got to figure, I was the geekiest, shyest, I literally couldn't talk to another human being. And then one day I said, I really don't like my life. I really don't like being poor. And if it was just about me, I think I probably would have never changed. What got me going, or kind of kicked me in the behind, was my parents left a communist country at 37 years old. My dad left jail, grabbed my mom and I, crossed our border to Italy. We had one suitcase. We ended up in Toronto. They gave up everything for me. And when I say everything, we had no family, no friends. My dad was 37 years old, had like $50 to his name, and didn't speak the language, and did it for me. And I'm the only kid. And I'm 23, and I'm saying, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can, I don't want to put myself out there. And then finally I said, oh my God, what am I doing? I got to make something of myself. And I didn't have visions about, being rich or, being worth X amount of dollars or buying a jet. Like none of that stuff ever went through my head. I just needed to be successful in life. And so my answer is everybody in this room and everybody watching, you will have to do something to move your life fundamentally forward that may not be native or comfortable to you. And at that point, you'll either do one of two things. You'll say, it's too hard, I can't do it, or I don't want to do it. Or you'll say, the pain of where I am is too great, and trust me, you will change. Pain is the greatest motivator.
Thank you. Sion Grace.
Hi, Robert. Congratulations on your awards and thanks for being here tonight. My name is Sion Grace and I have a great passion for Africa. I'm an entrepreneur with a great passion for Africa. By the way, tell Mark Cuban that I reached out to him. He still owes me an answer. So, I just have to say it out there, and I love the show, by the way. So my question, what advice or how can we connect with investors to invest in Africa? Because as you know, Africa is this region that most people don't know about, and yet the returns are great because it's higher than other developing countries, and it's even higher than the developed economies. So I have this idea, I'm an entrepreneur, how can I connect with investors and educate them and tell them that, yes, you're gonna take a chance on this, but it's gonna pay off. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's, so your question is more, how do I connect investors? Let's put Africa aside for a sec. I think there's a first step, which is what are most investors looking for, right? And I think at its simplest level, and I'm not talking about people or funds that invest in specific regions or government-backed funds or those kind of things, because there are funds you can go to, economic development funds and places like that, they'll invest in a region because that's their mandate. So I'm putting those aside because I think you'll probably find what those are and you'll approach those. I'm just talking about investors. So before I want an investor who will invest in Africa, my question would be, how do I get an investor? And how do I prove to them that I have something of value? Secondly, it happens to be in Africa. So the first thing from an investor, what people look for is a return and risk. And the best way to prove to an investor that there's minimal risk is some element of a track record, some element of scale, some element of data. So if you're telling me in this particular region in Africa, if I opened up a retail store or if I started selling a certain good, it will grow at a certain rate, show me some data for 3 months. Like show me a sliver of data that proves out a longer period of time. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that we see on the show, and I see in general, is people that are looking for investors want me to take a leap of faith. They come in, they give me an idea, and they don't have any data to back up that idea. And if you ever watch the show, whenever we challenge people about, they come, oh, if you invest here, my sales are going to be $1 million. If you believe in my t-shirt, we're going to sell $1 million the first year. And you'll always hear us say, well, have you sold any t-shirts? I'm like, well, no, I haven't started. And we're like, why don't you go stand on the street corner and try it? Like sell 3, sell 4 before you tell me you're going to sell $1 million. And then people come back and they push back on us and they say, well, no. If, the t-shirt market is $10 billion, if I can just get 1% of 1%, and we hate that because big statements like that are like a leap of faith. So I think there are a lot of people that are open to investing in non-standard regions, in the US or Europe because they're very competitive. So it's not so much about the region as it is what's unique about your idea or your business or your product that happens to be in Africa. And I think if you can combine those two things, show me a track record of some data, I think people are super interested. I mean, investors like to make money. I mean, that never goes away, regardless of the macro conditions. That's a constant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Robert. My name is Neil. Just going to keep my question really short. Are there any habits that you recommend us students at this period of our life to develop to better prepare us for a successful career in the workforce?
Discipline. You know, I think if you discipline and resilience. So here's an interesting stat for you, Neil. Out of the 5 sharks, 3 of us had the same job in our 20s. Only one of us has an MBA. We all have different careers. You know, Barbara was in real estate, Damon was in fashion, I was in cyber, Mark was a tech streaming guy. But all 3 of the 5 had one job in common, and believe it or not, it was debt collection. So all 3 of us, including me, 3 of us were debt collectors. And I will tell you right now, it is the crappiest job you can imagine. Like, I'm going way back. Like, today there's laws, there's certain things you can't say to people. But I worked in this huge boiler room where you literally called people, because I don't know if you guys know this, but credit card companies take a percentage of their overall debt, ranges from like 1.5% to 3%, depending on the card, and they sell that debt to credit collections companies for pennies on the dollar. So if they have $1 million of debt, they'll sell it for, you know, $80,000. And so what the debt company basically does is, if we can get more than 80,000, we're making money. And back then it was like, pay your bill, Neil. We're going to come to your house. We're going to send like, it was like brutal. And I only got the job because I couldn't get any other job in business. I was an artist. I have a degree, believe it or not, I have a degree in classical English literature. Shockingly, there wasn't a lot of business jobs for people with classical English literature degrees. So I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do with my life. My dad was like, you'll never amount to anything. You can't even get a job. And the only job I could get was credit collections. But I did it for, gosh, almost a year and a half. And I've almost all the jobs I had except cyber. I learned so much. The one thing I learned is resilience. Like, every call was crappy, but man, every now and then there is a ray of sunshine. Starting a business, being an entrepreneur, going to school for 4 years or 5 years, it's not always sexy and exciting or romantic. Building a great business is about all the little things you do for those 1 or 2 moments of, you know, sheer sunshine. So I think if you have the discipline and you can build a thick skin, which I call resilience, it's pretty hard not to succeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Robert. My name is Adrian, a big fan as well. Thank you for all you do. Building a business involves picking the right people, getting the right team together. You've talked about 20 years with Mr. O'Leary. I'm interested how that chemistry works. But growing your company to 1,000, again, involves people. What advice would you give young entrepreneurs who want to scale when they want, how do they pick the right people? How do you retain the right people? Because that's a key element in growing any business.
Gosh, that's such a great question. And, you know, people talk about science. like Len, I loved Len's speech at the beginning, where he talked about business as a science, but it's also an art. Your question is at the root of the art of business. There is no spreadsheet, there is no textbook for finding great talent, but also talent that works with you in your business. So I can share with you the mistakes that I've made. The biggest mistake I made was hiring people that I liked. Somebody somewhere along the way said to me, you should never hire somebody who you wouldn't want to sit next to on a transatlantic flight. And the naive me thought, oh, this is great advice. I'm going to do that. So as I was starting businesses, I would say, I don't know if I like this person. Oh, could I get along with this person? And that was kind of like my mantra, right? And then many years later, because I like to work out, I like to be fit, I got invited by the Army Rangers to go to their training camp. So just so you know, in the US military, there are, I think, only 2,500 US Army Rangers. Out of 80 people that apply, only one gets in. It's brutally hard. And I'm incredibly naive. And I thought, oh, I got to see, I'm going to kick ass in there. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do the training. And I got to tell you, after 24 hours, if I could have left, and if my mom could hear me crying, I would have gone home. It was so hard. And the premise of it was you were in there with actual Rangers who do this for a living. And in order to eat, you would have to create a mission plan, go after a target, while the other Army Rangers are trying to kill you. And if you didn't succeed, you didn't get to eat. It was so intense. Anyway, after it all, the head of training for the Army Rangers, and by the way, I think the US military is one of the greatest training organizations in the world. So after being there for 2 weeks, the head of the training department sat down with me, kind of went through what my good skills were as a leader, what my bad skills were, and basically explained to me why I wouldn't survive a day in the Army. So I said to him, that night I had dinner with the colonel or captain that runs the Army Rangers. And I said, wow, these people must get along like there's no tomorrow. They're there in battle, they're literally watching each other's backs. It's life or death. Man, when they're on, PTO and when they're on leave, they must hang out together all the time. And he looked at me and he said, no, most of them never see each other outside of their job. And he seemed confused by me saying that. And he looked at me and he said, I think you're misunderstanding the purpose of a team. A team is not a bunch of people that like each other. A team is a bunch of people that understand and respect each other's ability in order to accomplish a mission, period. The fact that they may like each other or don't like each other doesn't actually play into the mission's goal. And that was a real aha moment for me. And so today on my executive team, I have some people that I really get along with. And if I was in town, I'd love to have dinner with them. But I have a guy that I've worked with for 30 years in 4 companies. And I think he's one of the best people in the world at what he does. We've had dinner 3 times. Maybe it's once every 10 years kind of thing, right? So, but I love him. I love him because I respect him. I respect him as a human being. I respect his ability. And I know when I need that task, I can fully and completely trust him to accomplish it. And so for me, that's how I like to look at people on the team. The rest is relatively easy. There's some stuff you're good at, and there's stuff you know you're not good at. Like I'm not a good CFO. So for me, having a great CFO is really critical. But I think that's my general kind of advice is hire people that you feel comfortable with accomplishing a mission and you respect their ability.
Thank you.
Bring the questioner over here. Yep, here you go.
Hi, Mr. Herjavec. It's an incredible honor to hear you speak today. My name is actually Robert. And
that is the key to success, being named Robert. I think you're there. Nothing else you need to know.
Yeah, so my question is, so when you were first starting out on the journey of entrepreneurship, I wanted to know what were your thoughts and how exactly did you learn and develop the confidence to put yourself out there and to make yourself stand out and distinguish yourself, as well as develop the tenacity to continuously strive to improve and persevere as you're going through your different ideas and perhaps doubts also along your journey?
Yeah, great question. So let me break it out into two parts. The first one is, what was my thought at the beginning? Fear, bankruptcy, failure, embarrassment. Basically, those were my thoughts every single day. In fact, you just reminded me, when I started my first business, I actually thought we were going to go out of business. So a month in, I went out and got a full-time job because I was so sure it wasn't going to work that I went out and got a full-time job. And then 3 months in, I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't gone out of business. This is amazing. So I finally quit the job and kept going. And it goes back to before, like what you just did, came up here and asked me a question. I couldn't have done that at your age. I would have been too afraid. Like it wasn't natural to me. And people always say to me today, oh, I wish I was born like you. I wish I had the courage. I wish I was outgoing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that is a skill set you can learn. So you just got to try. Like, you're going to completely crash and burn for a while. There are some people that are absolutely born with it and they're great at speaking to others. And, you meet them and they're so social and you're like, wow. And guess what? They're just better at it than you are. But it's just going to take you a little longer, but you got to keep going. Now, the other part of your question was value. So I noticed something when I was starting out in business, that most of my friends would get into a career or a field and would either get bored of it or make a change, and then would go into a different industry. So one of my friends started out in hardware, like, retail hardware, like hardware goods stores, didn't like it. And then 3 years later, got into big pharma. So it was worked in pharma for a while and didn't like that. Then he got into commercial real estate. 10 years later, I've been in cybersecurity for 10 years. He's been into 3 different fields for 10 years. I'm an expert. The great thing about computers and new industries like that is if you just stay in it long enough, you become an expert. The world always rewards value. Business will forgive all kinds of stuff. And in the end, nobody cares who you are. Nobody cares where you came from. Really, the only thing people at scale in business care about is what value can you provide me? And I just found people that change industries, it's very difficult to become an expert at something. So in order to add value, you got to be an expert. It's the old 10,000 hours, right? Like, how do you become an expert at something? You just got to stick with it for a while. Like, it just takes time sometimes. And the great thing about being in your 20s is you have time. You have time to build that foundation of expertise so that when you do go into the 30s and 40s, you can create great value. And really at business, that's what my customers care, that we add more value than the next guy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's the end of our time. Robert, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us. Yes, congratulations on the award. Kind of to paraphrase one of your sayings, we are out and we wish you all the best.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time and thank you for the award. Thank you, Len.